ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ የክፍል ስራዎች ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
Last time, I think we have discussed issues related to the geology of Ethiopia and the Horn in general. Throughout the very long history of the planet, Earth in particular, and the solar system as a system in general, various geologic and biologic events were. Yes, Meron. Hello, Meron. Is someone Meron? Hello.
ግን ይቆራረጣል።
ኦኬ፣ አንቺ ካለሽበት ቦታ ነው ወይስ እኔ ጋር ይሆን ችግሩ?
አይ አንተ ጋር ነው፣ እኔ ጋር ሰላም ነው።
as usual እዛ ቢሮ ነኝ ያለሁት ኮሌጁ ጋር ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ። ፕሮባብሊ የኔትወርክ የመሄድ የመምጣት ሊሆን ስለሚችል the best of your effort. Can I continue, please?
Yes, ይሰማል በደንብ።
Okay. So, in the history of the Earth, what events took place when is a very important question. What geologic events took place when? As a geographer, we have to answer the question where, when, and other WH questions. So far, we have agreed that geography is a science. As a science, geographers are using scientific approach to find out solutions for these questions, WH questions. So which events took place when, okay, with respect to the time? That's why we are using geologic time scale so as to identify the specific time that events took place. So in the first season of the planet Earth, in the Precambrian season, what events occurred on Earth and beneath the surface of the Earth? Here in Ethiopia, in the Horn of Africa, and the whole planet on the Earth. Okay. We have seen that since this season, this time, as very remote from our knowledge, from our existence, from humans' existence on Earth, we have very limited knowledge about the whole planet. But many people, many geologists agreed that there were some events that took place on the surface of the earth in general and in Ethiopia in particular. What were that events? Okay, what were the events given to, assigned to, associated to this time? Is a very important question. In the Precambrian season, there was no life, okay, on Earth because conditions were not as such significantly suitable support life. As a result, the planet was free from, I mean, life. But life, like things were there. Life. Okay, number one. But even though scientists didn't agree on this issue, there were, okay, some significant events that took place on and in the Earth's surface. What were that? Okay, it's a very important question. Orogenesis or mountain formation process was common during that season because of internal and external forces. You can imagine the time span. You can imagine the length of time that this season covers. Okay, nearly 90% of the age of the Earth is the Precambrian age. Nearly 90%. Throughout this very long age, many mountain formation processes took place on the surface of the Earth. Following the environmental change, many geomorphic processes were also there on the surface of the Earth, including Ethiopia. But later on, during the Paleozoic season, during the Mesozoic, and during this recent Cenozoic season, you can imagine, many erosional processes, denudation processes, leveling processes, and depositional processes took place, even are taking place now. As a result, that orogenic processes that were occurred during the Precambrian season are now found beneath the surface of the Earth, below all layers of rocks. Okay. As a result, we called these rocks as basement rocks because they are found under all the rocks. Is that not? So the major events were orogenesis or mountain formation processes and leveling process. Okay. Peneplanation process, denudation processes, okay, erosional processes. Later on, very significant event took place on Earth. And there was a shift from that season to another significant new season because of the events, because of the magnitude of that geologic event during the Paleo season. Okay, that event is called a very prolonged, continuous denudation process. Not only, but also the existence of life on Earth and underwater, under the ocean. The ancient life, the first life that geologists agreed, that ancient life adapt that very harsh environment and exist on Earth during the Paleozoic season, the first life. Okay, but in Ethiopia, what were the major events during the Precambrian seasons, during the Paleozoic season, Mesozoic and Cenozoic season? We have to identify, okay, events that occurred in each geologic time division. Okay. በፓሊዮዞይክ ዘመን ምንድን ነበር ሀፕን የሆነው በኢትዮጵያ በፕላኔቷ በአጠቃላይ? The share of, for instance, the Precambrian season in the rock formation process of Ethiopia was almost nothing. I mean, the share of Paleozoic season, because there was no significant deposition and accumulation of sediments here in Ethiopia. But Precambrian season has about 25% share. Mesozoic season has about 25% share. And this season, the recent season, Cenozoic season, has about 50% share. Okay. Now let's look at the recent, the today's era. Which one is that? Which era is the most recent era in the history of the planet? Biniam. From the four time divisions of the age of the Earth, which one do you think is the most recent era? Are you with me, Biniam? Hello? Hello? Biniam is someone?
Hello?
Is someone?
Yes, yes. I was not participate the previous class, so
Okay.
that's one.
Well, we have four eras. Precambrian era, the oldest era, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic era. መሬት ከተፈጠረች ጀምሮ እስካሁን ድረስ ያለውን የመሬት ዘመን የመሬት እድሜ በአራት ዘመናት ትላልቅ ዘመናት ነው የሚከፈለውና ያሁኑ የምንለው ከ70 ሚሊዮን ዓመት ወዲህ ያለውን የመሬት ታሪክ ማለት ነው። ከ70 ሚሊዮን ዓመት ወዲህ ማለት አሁን ያለንበትን ሲዝን ጨምሮ ማለት ነው። the most recent ማለት አሁን ያለንበት የቅርቡ የዛሬው ማለት ነው። the oldest era የምንለው ከመሬት ከተፈጠረች ጀምሮ የነበረው ኤራ ማለት ነው። ያ ፕሪካምብሪያን የምንለው የመጀመሪያው ሲዝን ማለት ነው። So within this recent era, okay, within these 70 million years, you can imagine the volume of events. You can imagine geologic events, geomorphologic events. Okay. So በ70 ሚሊዮን ዓመት ውስጥ የተሰራን ታሪክ ማሰብ ይቻላል። We are talking specifically about the geologic history of Ethiopia and the whole and the planet Earth in general. So which geologic events took place in this era? Not yet. Basically, there were several very huge, even uncountable. It's difficult to count. Okay, the volume of events, the magnitude of events, the number of events that took place on Earth and under the surface of the Earth. But significant events of these, there are few significant events that geologists identified, okay, to make the history of the Earth clear and to make it very easy, very understandable. of this, the uplifting of, the separation of, the fracture of Arabian landmass and Ethiopian landmass here in the Horn of Africa was considered as one significant geologic event. Okay. The fracture of these two landmass, very big landmasses. Okay, the Eastern Africa from the Arabian landmass, number one. Following this fracture, following this fault, you can imagine the volume of lava that poured out, okay, and leveled on the surface of the earth. Volcanic eruption was also another significant geologic event. Okay, following that crack, via that fracture, okay, due to the pressure originated from the surface of the earth, materials that were, okay, in between poured out and layered on the surface of the earth. So volcanism was another significant event. Not only, but also deposition was another significant geologic event during this season. Okay. Now, last time I think we have touched the ways how the Great East African Rift Valley was formed, if you remembered. የታላቁ የምስራቅ አፍሪካ ስምጥ ሸለቆ የምንለው የኢትዮጵያን ስምጥ ሸለቆ ጨምሮ እንዴት ነው የተፈጠረው፣ በመቼው የመሬት ታሪክ ነው የተፈጠረው የሚለውን ለማየት ሞክረን ነበር። If you remembered, there are two forces inside the earth. These are tensional forces and compressional forces. Look, tensional forces are forces originated from somewhere at a point and moved apart towards different opposite direction. When these forces begin somewhere at a point and moved towards different direction, okay, at a proportional level, you can imagine the rocks in between these two layers. Okay, the crust, okay, of the earth, rocks are forced to, okay, move here and there. These rocks might be fractured, might also be moved without any separation, without any fracture. Okay, don't forget this very important point. Having this force in common beneath the surface of the earth, there is also another type of force, compressional forces. These are forces that originate from different points and move towards a common pole. Okay, you can imagine the surface of the earth, the rocks in between these two forces. Okay, when these two forces push towards a common point, the rocks that are found in between are forced to move up or fractured, depending on the strength of the rocks in between. When we look at the formation of the Rift Valley, the contribution of tensional forces are very significant, very high, you can imagine, because only tensional forces result for the existence of fracture, fault, okay, crack, when these forces moved apart. And these forces result, okay, separation. Okay. Unfortunately, during the first Cenozoic era, there was a very big event, the so-called the existence of the occurrence of two parallel faults. Okay, when two parallel faults occurred because of tensional forces, you can imagine, and the land masses in between these two faults collapse down, and the land masses that exist on sides of these two faults moved up because of the pressure, because of the tensional forces that exist beneath. A very big depression was happened, that stretched from Syria, crossing several East African countries, including Ethiopia and Eritrea, and ended up in our Eastern African countries, Mozambique. Measuring up to 7,200 kilometers total extent. This area hosts a very huge internal forces during this era, Cenozoic era. ስምጥ ሸለቆ የምንለው አፈጣጠሩ መላምቱ ሃይፖቴሲሱ የሚያሳየው ይሄ ሁለት ፓራላል ስንጥቆች በተፈጠሩ ሰዓት ነው። በዚህ ዘመን ሁለት ፓራላል ስንጥቅ ቅድም ባልኳችሁ በቴንሽናል ፎርስ በሚባለው ሁለት ኃይሎች በሚሳሳቡበት ሰዓት የመሬት ክፍል ዶንት ፎርጌት የመሰንጠቅ ዕጣ ፈንታ ይገጥመዋል። ያ አለት መሬትን የሰራው አለት በቀላሉ የሚሰነጠቅ የሚሰበር በሆነ ሰዓት ማለት ነው። ያኔ በሁለቱ ፓራላል ፎልትስ መካከል ያለው የመሬት ክፍል ኮላፕስ ሲያደርግ ኮላፕስ የሚያደርገው በነገራችን ላይ የመሬት ክፍል ስፔስ ሲያገኝ ነው። በመሬት የውስጠኛው ክፍል ስፔስ ካላገኘ ኮላፕስ ሊያደርግ አይችልም። ስፔስ የሚያገኘው ደግሞ ከስንጥቁ በሁለቱም በተለያዩ አቅጣጫዎች ያለው የመሬት ክፍል ወደ ላይኛው የመሬት ክፍል በፕሬሸር አማካኝነት በግፊት አማካኝነት ወደ ላይ በሚሳብበት ሰዓት ስፔስ ይኖራል። ኢን ቢትዊን ያለው የመሬት ክፍል በዛ ሰዓት የመደርመስ የመስጠም አጋጣሚ ይፈጠራል ማለት ነው። ስፓሻል ኤክስተንቱ ቅድም እንዳልኳችሁ ከሰሜኑ የስምጥ ሸለቆ ክፍል እስከ ደቡቡ የስምጥ ሸለቆ ክፍል ያለው ስፓሻል ኤክስተንቱ ምንድን ነው የሚያክለው የሚለውን This Rift Valley, the Great East African Rift Valley, touches the area of, as I've said several times, Syria, particularly Palestine, እስከ ሞዛምቢክ ያለው ማላዊ የመሬት ክፍል ተች የሚያደርግ ነው። ብዙ የአፍሪካ ሀገሮች ጨምሮ ኢንክሉዲንግ ኢትዮጵያ ቅድም እንዳልኩት ጀነራል ዲስታንሱ 7200 ኪሎ ሜትር ያክል ነው። From this total distance, you can imagine the majority of this number, 7,200 kilometers, the majority is found here in Africa. 5600 ገደማ አፍሪካ ነው የሚገኘው ከኤርትራ ጀምሮ አብዛኛውን የምስራቅ አፍሪካ ሀገራት ማለት ነው። Of these 5,600 kilometers total distance here in Africa, nearly 2,000 kilometers are found here in Ethiopia and Eritrea. You can imagine. What kind of landforms were formed when this kind of geologic collapse, this kind of depression was formed? Is a very important question. ታላቁ ስምጥ ሸለቆ ሲፈጠር ምን አይነት መልክዓ ምድር ሊፈጠር ይችላል? You can imagine. ምን አይነት ነምበር 1 ይህ የስምጥ ሸለቆ ቀጠና የምንለው አንስተብል ቀጠና ነው። አመቱን ሙሉ ኦልሞስት አመቱን ሙሉ ማለት ይቻላል ያልተረጋጋ የመሬት ክፍል ነው። Because this area is considered as a very active area. Okay, a very active area, unstable area. the land mass moved up and down. This area hosts several landslides, earthquakes, okay, so on and so forth. ቦታው የመሬት መንቀጥቀጥ፣ መንሸራተት፣ ፍንዳታ so on and so forth የሚስተናገድበት የመሬት ክልል ነው ይህ አካባቢ። When this rift valley was formed, what kind of landform? ምን አይነት landform ነው የተፈጠረው? ከፓለስታይን ጀምሮ ከሲሪያ ጀምሮ ምንድነው እስከ ሞዛምቢክ ያለው የመሬት ክፍል ስንጥቅ በተፈጠረው ወቅት ምን አይነት የመሬት ገጽታ ተፈጠረ? Okay, this big geologic event at the end of the day significant የሆነ ያልታየ ከዛ በፊት probably ከዛም በኋላ አዲስ ገጽታ አዲስ ፌስ ነው መሬቱ ጋር የፈጠረው ማለት ይቻላል። Look, this rift, number one, resulted the separation of big land mass like the Horn Africa and the Arab land mass. Number two, when these depressions were formed, you can imagine the water flow along that depression, along that the bed of that depression, and several lakes, natural lakes, okay, specifically Rift Valley lakes were formed along these beds. Okay, as a result, you can imagine the occurrence of Red Sea, Gulf of Eden, and other several, okay, Ethiopia, including Ethiopian lakes. Okay, Ethiopia has a naturally gifted this kind of lakes, natural lakes. Okay, specifically Rift Valley lakes, because water accumulated on this depression results a continuous and permanent store of water, and we are now using this water as a source of attractions, a source of irrigation, drinking water, whatever. Okay. Now let me show you the major geologic event, the major, physiographic event. Okay. The major landforms because of the formation of this rift. Rift ምን ፈጠረ at the end of the day? Number one, it divides the land mass of Ethiopia into two. Okay, the land mass that are found northward and westward and eastward from it. Chapter 3 ላይ እናየዋለን። Chapter 3 ይመስለኛል የኢትዮጵያን ፊዚዮግራፊክ ዲቪዥን የስንጥ ሸለቆ ቀጠና ከምንለው ምዕራባዊና ምስራቃዊ የኢትዮጵያ ክፍል በሚል ቶታል ላንዱን ሃይላንዱን ሎላንዱን በሁለት የመክፈል እድል ይዞ መጣ ማለት ነው። Number two, it separates the Arab land mass from the African land mass, as I've said before. በሴኖዞይክ ዘመን ነው ይህ separation fracture የተስተዋለው። Number three, following that depression, following that deep depression, now we have Dead Sea, Red Sea, and Gulf of Eden troughs, depressions after this event. Okay. At the end of the day, this depression, this rift results basins and fault depressions on which Rift Valley lakes are formed and accumulated, okay, along its bed. ከአፋር የሰሜኑ ክፍል አፋር ትራያንግል ከምንለው ጀምሮ እስከ ደቡብ የታችኛው ክፍል የሪፍት ቫሊ ሳውዘርን ቲፕ እስከምንለው you can imagine the number of lakes, okay, that are found along this Rift Valley region. Okay, we have various lakes. okay, having different volume of water because of the differences of tributaries, supplying water to each, okay, lake, even though the volume of water in each lake vary from place to place. We have several, okay, Rift Valley lakes that are landed along the beds of the depression. So structural formation physiographic effect no, the formation of Rift Valley here in the Eastern Africa, in the Horn Africa. ስምጠቱ ሲፈጠር አንድም ኢትዮጵያ ብቻ ሳይሆን ምስራቅ አፍሪካን ሆርን አፍሪካን ከአረቢያን ላንድ ማስ ሰፕሬት የማድረግ ሁለቱም ቅድም ያልኳቸውን ወተር በዲስ ኦኬ ወተር በዲስ ላይክ ሬድ ሲ ዴድ ሲ ገልፍ ኦፍ ኤደን ኢንዲያን ኦሽን ታስታውሳላችሁ የመጀመሪያው ሱፐር ላንድ ማስ ሂውጅ ላንድ ማስ ማን እንደሚባል as a very first we had a single land mass surrounded by a single water body. What was that single very huge land mass?
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ MBA በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ MBA በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ MBA በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ MBA በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ MSc በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው
ፈሳሽ ያልሆነ የመሬት ክፍል ያ ወደ መሬት የላይኛው ክፍል ሊወረወር ይችላል። መሬት ላይ ፕሬሸሩ አነስተኛ ከሆነ መግፋት መሮር የማይችል ከሆነ መሬት ውስጥ ያለው ኃይል ያ ሞልተን ማቴሪያል እዛው መሬት ውስጥ ሊደነግ ሶሊዲፋይ ሊሆን ይችላል። አዘይበት ሲደን ሮክ ሊፈጥር ይችላል። ሶ ያ ማቴሪያል ሮክ የሚፈጥረው ኢግኒየስ ሮክ ምንለው የሚፈጥረው በዛ ልክ ነው። በውስጠኛ መሬት ክፍል ሶሊዲፋይድ ከሆነ ኢንትሩሲቭ ኢግኒየስ ሮክ ይፈጥራል። በውጭኛ መሬት ክፍል ፖርድ አውት ከሆነ በኋላ ሶሊዲፋይድ ሲሆን የሚፈጠር ከሆነ ደግሞ የሚደነግ ሲሆን ደግሞ ኤክስትሩሲቭ ኢግኒየስ ሮክ ይፈጥራል። Anyway, during the quaternary period, okay, nearly after 1.5 million years, several volcanic activities took place and still are taking place in some parts of the country. As a result, this zone, Rift Valley zone, hosts this kind of landfall. Okay. Don't forget the uplifting of the landmass in general. When the landmass uplifts, የሚፈጥረው ተራራው ኮረብታው ስምጠቱ የኮላፕስድ የሆነ የመሬት ክፍል so on and so forth ሰፊ ነው። ስለዚህ various and freshly preserved volcanic cones were formed here in Ethiopia. When volcanic materials accumulated on the surface of the earth, you can imagine, and when that lava solidified, this kind of geologic process resulted in the formation of hills, the formation of mountains of different shapes, cone-like shape, for instance. Okay, a serious accumulation of lava results landforms of different shapes, including cone-like shape, different hills of different size, mountains of different shape and size, and so forth. For instance, landforms around the Rift Valley zone, around Adama, around Bishoftu, so on and so forth. Okay, around the North Central Massif, so on and so forth, today are the result of these volcanic activities. But later on, since the time is very long, this volcanic activity today are extinct totally stopped. Okay, these activities are not as such visible almost in many parts of Ethiopia, except some, okay, Afar, around Afar and some Rift Valley region. Okay, the Rift Valley region experiences several, okay, features today. hot spring የምንለው የፈላ አይነት የፈላ ውሃ አይነት hot spring fumaroles unstable የሆነው ቀጠና አዳዲስ ፊቸሮች አዳዲስ ላቫ አኪሙሌት የመሆን ኦኬ ወደ ምስራቅ ኢትዮጵያ ሄዳችሁ ታውቁ ካላችሁ እኔ ሄጄ አላውቅም of course I see it by using different channels but I couldn't have a chance to observe particularly the eastern Ethiopia Ertalen ብታዩ okay active ነው የቮልካኒክ ኤራፕሽን ዞን ነው ከዛ አካባቢ የመጣችሁ ካላችሁ ከኔ ተሻለ ታስረዱ ትችላላችሁ ስለ አካባቢ ያየ ከሰማ ስለሚሻል but ሪፍት ቫሊ ዞን የምንለው ምን አይነት ባህሪ ያለው የመሬት ክፍል ነው የሚለውን ካየን ቮልካኒክ ኤራፕሽን ኮመን የሆነበት ላንድ ስላይድ ኮመን የሆነበት ኦኬ አርዝኩዊክ እንደዛው frequently experience የምናደርግበት ዞን ነው ኳተርነሪ ቮልካኒክ ኤራፕሽን ብቻ አይደለም በዚህ 1 ሚሊዮን ዓመት ወዲህ ከ1.5 ሚሊዮን ዓመት ወዲህ የምናስተውለው ቮልካኒክ ኤራፕሽን ብቻ አይደለም significant event there was a very uniquely heavy rain okay በፕሪካምብሪያን በፓሊዮዞይክ በሜሶዞይክ ዘመን ያልነበረ very heavy rain መሬት አስተናግዳለች including Eastern Africa that rain is called pluvial rain or fluvial rain in Africa you can imagine when this heavy rain occurred on earth you can imagine the influence of this rain you can imagine the influence of the floods okay በኳተርነሪ ፔሪድ በቮልካኒክ ኤራፕሽን አማካይነት accumulated የሆነው ላንድ ፎርም eroded በማድረግ demolished በማድረግ fractured በማድረግ this rain results okay the demolishing of the external face of the earth that was made by internal forces in fact there was a common war between internal and external forces ባለፈው እንዳልኩት that nobody was a winner nobody once internal forces okay build landforms like hills mountains so on and so forth in another time external forces like rain like wind okay came and demolished it ስለዚህ ይህ ጦርነት continuous የሆነ ቀጣይነት ያለው ጦርነት ነው so ቀደም እንዳልኩት ኳተርነሪ ቮልካኒክ ኤራፕሽን የመሰረተውን ተራራ ኮረብታ ገደል በሄቪ ሬን አማካይነት ገደሉን በመሙላት ተራራውን በመናድ so on and so forth different landforms are still established by this process okay so what was unique during the quaternary period during the second and recent period is a very important question here in Ethiopia erosion pluvial rain አንደኛው unique event ነው here in Ethiopia and in Africa in general as a result ቀደም ያልኩት rifts were filled by flood during this process ቀደም የተፈጠረው ያ lowland ያ depression ያ trough these depressions these lowlands were filled by accumulated by water because of the heavy rain that was occurred on earth at that time as a result fortunately we Ethiopians host several Rift Valley lakes because of this natural process. Don't forget Lakes Way. Don't forget Hawassa, where tourists from different corners of the world are prioritizing before COVID to practically visit our natural gifts. Don't forget Arba and lakes bedded around it. Okay, Abaya, Chamu, and other smaller lakes, not only, but also naturally built mountains, naturally built hills, naturally given and naturally gifted weather conditions, so on and so forth. These were landforms that were formed during these 70 million years. Look, when erosion occurred, that eroded materials from the higher ground were transported via agents like rain, like wind, like weathering, and accumulated somewhere else. Rain as an external agent eroded materials from higher grounds and transported it until it loses its energy. ዝናብ ወይም ጎርፍ የሸረሸረውን የመሬት ክፍል የሚያጓጉዘው አቅም እስካገኘ ድረስ ነው። ዝናብ ጎርፍ ከከፍተኛ ቦታ ወደ ዝቅተኛ ቦታ ሲያጓጉዝ የሚያጓጉዘው ስሎፑ ምኑም ማግዞት volume ማግዞት አቅም እስካለው ድረስ ነው። ስለዚህ that eroded materials were transported somewhere else in the lower ground. So there was a very heavy deposition of materials in some other parts of the planet, including Ethiopia and the whole. ካስታወሳችሁ በፓሊዮዞይክ ዘመን there was no significant rock formation process ብለናል here in Ethiopia አይደለ? ያ ማለት ግን በዛ ዘመን ምንም አይነት external agent አልነበረም ማለት አይደለም። Unfortunately significant የሆነ የሚታይ የሚቆጠር እዚህ ግባ የሚባል impact ስላልነበር እንጂ but in this season deposition was significantly huge here in Ethiopia and in Africa in general. So that erosion and deposition resulted in the formation of different landforms. What landforms were formed during this time? Throughout this very long process, ምን አይነት landforms ነው የተፈጠረው? at the end of the day ከፍተኛ የሆነ ዝናብ pluvial rain ነው የምንለው፣ ከፍተኛ የሆነ ምንድነው ሽርሸራ and ዛ ከፍተኛ የሆነ sedimentation, accumulation and deposition of rocks, okay, layering one over the other, okay, that resulted the formation of different landforms. Look, ታዲያ ያ ግግር ደለል የት ነው accumulated የሚሆነው? ጎርፉ ወንዙ አቅም የሚያጣው ለማጓጓዝ አቅም የሚያጣው የት ነው? Rivers have three parts if you know it. Rivers have three parts. The upper part, including the source of a river, the middle part, and the lower part, including the mouth of a river. The upper part of a river is also considered as the source of a river because probably the source of a river might be highlands, might also be lakes, oceans, marshy grounds, swampy areas, so on and so forth. A river is believed to be originated from these points, these landforms. But here in Ethiopia, we don't have lakes, we don't have oceans, we don't have lakes that resulted bigger rivers. Almost all the rivers here in Ethiopia are originated from our mountains, our highland areas, our areas having cooler temperature. Look, these rivers erode mountains, hills, and rocks of higher grounds, so on and so forth. At the end of the day, ከከፍተኛ ቦታ የተነሳው ወንዝ ወይም ደግሞ ጎርፍ የት ነው የሚሄደው ነው። ቀደም እንዳልኩት በሶስቱም የወንዙ ክፍል ዲፖዚሽን ሊኖር ይችላል፣ ሰድመንቴሽን ሊኖር ይችላል፣ ኤክሴፕት በላይኛው የወንዙ ክፍል ቢኮዝ የላይኛው የወንዙ ክፍል ቀደም እንዳልኩት ከፍተኛ ቦታ ነው። ከፍተኛ ቦታ ላይ ደግሞ የወንዙ ቮሊዩም እንኳን አነስተኛ ቢሆን ስሎፑ ያግዘዋል። ስሎፑ ስለሚያግዘው የትኛውም የጎርፍ ወይም ደግሞ የወንዙ ቮሊዩም በቀላሉ ቢገር ቦልደር ቢሆን ትራንስፖርት ማድረግ ይቻላል ማለት ነው። but along the middle part of a river and along the lower part of a river deposition common ነው። በተለይ ዝቅተኛው የወንዙ ክፍል የታችኛው የወንዙ ክፍል ምን ነው? so እዚህ ጋር ያለው ላንድ ፎርም let me show you. by the way ፓወርፖይንቱ ይታያችኋል? ብሩክ
አዎ ይታያል።
ፓወርፖይንቱን ሼር አድርጌያችኋለሁ?
አዎ ይታያል።
ኦኬ እዚህ ጋር የሚታየው የላንድ ፎርም ታዲያ በዲፖዚሽን አማካኝነት አይ ሚን በኳተርነሪ ዲፖዚሽን የምንለው where do you think these sediments are deposited at the end of the day ነው ጥያቄ ነው። ምን አይነት ላንድ ፎርም ኤስታብሊሽ ነው በዚህ ዘመን? number 1 on the lake beds and swampy depressions. look ቀደም ያልኩት ሪፍት ተፈጥሯል። ሪፍት ከተፈጠረ በኋላ ዲፕሬሽን ከተፈጠረ በኋላ ያ ዲፈረንት ሳይዝድ ትረፍስ ከተፈጠረ በኋላ pluvial rain occur ሆነ። so that rain resulted floods and this flood exacerbate facilitate erosions and at the end of the day results the accumulation of these rocks somewhere else in some parts of Ethiopia and in some parts of the Horn Africa. so what kind of deposition was formed? number 1, deposition was common along the beds of lakes that lost its water because of probably evaporation, because of the harsh, extremely high temperature, so on and so forth. so deposition at the end of the day was common along the beds of lakes, along swampy areas, marshy areas, so on and so forth. The deposition that was formed on these parts of the earth is called lacustrine deposits or lacustrine deposition. number 1. number 2, on the sides of river look ወንዙ ሰድመንት ሮክ ሲያጓጉዝ የግድ ሀይቅ ጋር ላይ ደርስ ይችላል፣ ዝቅተኛ ቦታ ጋር ላይ ደርስ ይችላል። እዛው በወንዙ ክፍልም ሰድመንቴሽን ሊኖር ይችላል። እዚህ ነው ሲደው ቮሊዩሙ ሲቀንስ ዝናብ ጥሎ ከፍተኛ ቮሊዩም ኦፍ ፍለድ በነበረ ሰዓት እና ዝናቡ መጠኑ ሲቀንስ ቮሊዩሙ ሲቀንስ ኦኬ እዛው በወንዙ ሳይድ እና ሳይድ ሊኖር ይችላል። ኦኬ sedimentation. that sediment is called pluvial deposition or fluvial deposition because that deposition was occurred along the sides of a river, along the sides of a river, along the plainy zones of a river, so on and so forth. the other types of deposition ቀደም ያልኩት በተለይ በከፍተኛ ቦታዎች አካባቢ ከፍተኛ ቦታዎች like the valley mountain like Mount Ras Dashin and around that area, where the temperature is very cool almost throughout the year. Okay. What kind of deposition do you think occurred along these areas? Okay. What kind of deposition? ማውንቴን ነው ማውንቴኒየስ ኤሪያ ነው አካባቢው ቀዝቃዛማ አካባቢ ነው አካባቢው ስለዚህ ምን አይነት ሰድመንቴሽን ነው የሚኖረው ምን አይነት ዲፖዚሽን ነው የሚኖረው ዝናብ ከከፍተኛ ቦታ ወደ ዝቅተኛ ቦታ ማን ነው ጎርፍ የሚፈሰው so mountainous የሚባሉ አካባቢዎች what kind of deposition do you think these areas experience glacial kind of okay because these areas experience very cool temperature and ice is commonly and formed because of that cool temperature. As a result, these areas host the deposition which is unique and special than other areas. In fact, rain is not the only agent, flood is not the only agent, but also wind plays its own significant role in the formation of deposition, in the form of the formation of accumulation of sediments, transportation of sediments from one area to the other area. Sedimentation was also common due to this external agent wind. A kind of sedimentation that was occurred because of wind is aeolian deposition. Aeolian deposition is deposition, just like the deposition that was formed by a flood, so on and so forth. What makes it unique as this deposition was formed not by flood, but the accumulation of sediments, the layering of sediments one over the other because of wind. Wind deposition is common in a very open areas where there is no vegetation cover, where there is no mountains, so on and so forth. Okay, around deserty areas, around lowlands, ንፋስ በቀላሉ እቃዎችን ማጓጓዝ የሚችልበት ማቴሪያሎችን ማጓጓዝ የሚችልበት አካባቢ ማለት in areas where hindrances are there, this kind of deposition is not common. እጽዋት አለበት አካባቢ ተራራማ አካባቢ ንፋስ የተሸከመውን ሮክ የተሸከመውን ቦልደር የተሸከመውን ማቴሪያል የማያጓጉዝበት እድል ካለ deposition አይኖርም ማለት ነው so aeolian deposition is common in deserty and open free zones in Ethiopia probably in lowland areas of the country we may experience this kind of deposition okay where there is no rain sufficient rain ጎርፍ አንጠብቅም ዝናብ አንጠብቅም ስለዚህ sedimentation ካለ በwind ነው የሚሆነው The other very important landform that was formed during this season was marine deposit, okay, or coastal areas deposition, okay. Flood transported materials even up to the sides of lakes, up to the beds of the bodies of seas, oceans, so on and so forth. ቀደም እንዳልኩት የውሃው ቮሊዩም የፍለዱ ቮሊዩም ስሎፑ ነው ወሳኙ ኢንፋክት ኦኬ የውሃው ቮሊዩም ፕላስ ስሎፑ ሌቭልድ ከሆነ ቀላልን ማለት ብትሆን ማጓጓዝ ይከብዳል ውሃማ አካላት ለወንዞች ስለዚህ ሜሪን ዲፖዚት የምንለው along the sides of lakes along the body of seas oceans whatever ሚስተዋል deposition marine deposition ይባላል in fact this kind of deposition is common especially today following the climate change and global warming seas and lakes are losing their volume because of evaporation and we can easily observe sedimentations around its bodies. In Ethiopia particularly, where do you think are common this kind of deposition? እንግዲህ ቀደም እንዳልኩት deposition የሚኖረው sedimentation የሚኖረው accumulation of rocks የሚኖረው somewhere in lowland areas of Ethiopia ነው ከከፍተኛው የሀገሪቱ ክፍል የተሸረሸረው ከደጋማው የሀገሪቱ ክፍል የተሸረሸረው አለት የት ሊሄድ ይችላል okay the only place in Ethiopia that can host new rocks and new rock formation due to flood are lowland areas okay and Rift Valley regions ምን ጥያቄ የለውም ታላላቅ ወንዞች አሉ including አባይ እነኚህ ታላላቅ ወንዞች smaller tributaries ትናንሽ ገባሮቻቸውን ጨምሮ የሚያጓጉዟቸውን ሮክስ የት ዲፖዚት ሊያደርጉ ይችላሉ okay in many lowland parts of Ethiopia in many not only lowland areas listed here but in many parts of Ethiopia having these volcanic activities and erosional and depositional activities the share of Cenozoic season throughout the rock formation process of Ethiopia is very huge on top of all Cenozoic era contributes nearly half of the country's rock share nearly 50% of the land mass of the country was formed during this process during the process of internal and external processes of this era okay 50% in fact the face of Ethiopia and the face of the planet in general as a result of this season okay አሁን ያለው የመሬት ገጽታ አሁን ባለው የዘመን ውጤት ነው okay ያ ማለት ግን የበፊት external እና internal processes share የለም ማለት አይደለም but okay reshaped ሆኖ አሁን ያለውን ፌስ የያዘው በዚህ ዘመን ነው እንደማለት ነው Mesozoic era 25% ሼር አለው Precambrian era 25% ሼር አለው ነገር ግን ከ600 እስከ 225 ሚሊዮን ዓመት ያለው የፓሊዮዞይክ ሲዝን በኢትዮጵያ ያን ያክል ሲግኒፊካንት የሆነ ዌል ኖውን የሆነ ዌል አይደንቲፋይድ የሆነ ሮክ ፎርሜሽን ሼር አልነበረውም ማለት ነው ያ ማለት ግን በኢትዮጵያ ምንም ነገር አልተፈጠረም ማለት አይደለም significantly identified የሆነ well identified well recorded የሆነ ዴታ የለም እንደማለት ነው okay having these geologic and biologic events in general having these highlights having these hints you can imagine how Ethiopia is rich in terms of mineral resource okay you can imagine ከፕሪካምብሪያን ዘመን ጀምሮ ያለው የጂኦሎጂክ ፕሮሰስ that ups and downs results Ethiopia to have a very huge volume of rocks of different contents. Okay. የፕሪካምብሪያን ሲዝን 25% ሸር አለው ብያለሁ። የሜሶዞይክ 25 የሴኖዞይክ 50% ሸር throughout this share በተለይ የፕሪካምብሪያን ሲዝን expensive rocks or metallic rocks ቀላል የሚባል አይደለም። in many parts of Ethiopia today these rocks are contributing to the national GDP even. Okay. Ethiopia has a very strong attachment with these rocks. Ethiopia has a culture of exploiting rocks and minerals for different purposes. Even though the way Ethiopia is exploiting its resource is traditional and outdated, Ethiopia has a culture of mineral extraction, a culture of rock extraction. This is a visible fact. Look, Ethiopia is rich in terms of mineral resource. Ethiopia has gold, has platinum, tantalum, whatever other rocks too. But the question is, are we utilizing our rocks to the level that the world is expecting, that geologists are expecting, or not? It's a very important question. We agreed that we have mineral resource, we have precious mineral resource, we have very huge lake resource, water resource, but we are far back from proper exploitation, and we are far back from making these resources something significant to contribute the national GDP. Okay. Why do you think, what factors do you think are facing us, are challenging us, are hindering us from properly exploiting this resource? Is a very important question. ችግሩ ምንድን ነው? ሪሶርሱ አለ ካልን፣ ሚነራሉ አለ ካልን፣ ሜታሊክ ሚነራሉ አለ ካልን፣ ባህሉም አለን ካልን፣ እዚህ ጋር የሚለው ከ2000 ዓመት በፊት ጀምሮ ነው የሚለው ያለን አታችመንት ከ2000 ዓመት ጀምሮ ከተፈጥሮ ጋር ያለን ዝምድና ከማዕድን ጋር ያለን ዝምድና ቅርብ ነው ካልን፣ ካልቸራችን ነው ካልን፣ what are still the challenges hindering us from utilization of these minerals? Even we have the potential to export and satisfy the needs of many Africans. Many geologists, okay, agreed that we have the potential to satisfy not only the market demand of Africa, but also the demand of Europe. Potentially we have, but practically we are not closer to this. We are far. This generation, including you, are expected to narrow down the gaps between the potential and the actual level of utilization. Which mineral resources are found here in Ethiopia is a very important. Let's identify first what kind of minerals are available here. Which minerals are found where in Ethiopia? Which part of Ethiopia has what kind of mineral? ያን ማወቅ ይጠይቃል። አካውንታንትም ብንሆን ነጋዴም ብንሆን ሌላም የትኛው ሚነራል ነው ያለው? የትኛው ሮክ ነው ያለው? የት ነው ያለው? የትኛው ብቻ ሳይሆን የት? ጎልድ ካልን የት? which part of Ethiopia? So that we can involve in just searching that material and developing that material, that mineral, I mean, and finding out, developing and processing, semi-processing, so on and so forth, and at the end of the day exporting it, and at least we have to put our fingerprint in the process of upgrading our economy, in the process of transforming our national interest, our demands, so on and so forth. Ethiopia has very huge volume of mineral resource potentially. From its northern tip up to southern tip, from its western to eastern part, Ethiopia has abundant resources. Like gold, Ethiopia has gold resource potential. In fact, considering the potential of this resource, gold resource, many national and international companies are just involved today to find out, process and export it, like Midrock company. I think I know it. Midrock, Izana mining company, and other international companies are interested to even involve in this industry because they know Ethiopia has a very huge potential mineral resource because of its natural geologic formation. Ethiopia has. Don't forget which part of Ethiopia has this kind of resource. As I have said several times last time, in many parts of Ethiopia, these rocks, Precambrian rocks, metallic rocks, are visible in many parts of the country, particularly in the lowland parts of the country, around, for instance, Matakkal, that western lowland of the country, around the Abai Gorge, because of when the external layers of rocks that was formed during the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and during this season eroded and washed away by flood and wind. Today, these rocks are visible in many parts of Abai Gorge today. Around another western lowland, Gambella, and in some western highlands of Ethiopia, including Wolaga, Elubabu, so on and so forth. These zones have huge potential of gold. Platinum is here in Ethiopia. Tantalum is here in Ethiopia. We have potash. We have gypsum potential. Look, we have marble. We have huge. We have also a very abundant potential source for construction industries. The question is not availability. The question is the level of exploitation. The approach we are employing to develop that natural gift, natural resource, mineral resource, in the way that the world is seeking to have. Our approach is very much traditional. Our knowledge about exploitation is very much not compatible and competent enough with the international knowledge. Our economy is very weak, to budget, to allocate, sufficient budgets to this sector. As a result, we are not properly exploiting it. With all these odds, our management, our administration, our politics is encircled by misuse and corruption. Even we are not properly exploiting our scarce or limited budget. Okay. Politicians and assigned managers are wrongly using budgets, poorly using budgets. Our level of decision making is very, very weak as a result. Even though we have huge potential of mineral resource, rock resource, we are still very poor. Do you know the share of this sector, the mining sector, to the national GDP, guys? Can you imagine the annual share of this sector, mining sector, mineral sector, to the national GDP, as compared to our old and primary sector, agriculture, particularly coffee, sesame, and other exportable items? We are still relying our economy on coffee. We are still exporting only coffee and sesame, green mango, and like others. But the share of mineral industry, the share of mining industry is still very little, or it's possible to say no, totally. Okay. But we are talking about the potential. We have to talk about the challenge. We have to talk about the problems encircling us from utilizing this very huge potential. Okay, you can imagine the construction sector. Okay, even though the construction materials, raw materials are available here in Ethiopia, we are still importing construction materials from abroad, from international market, by just paying a very huge cost. Why do you think aren't we using this natural gift? We have to at least reduce importable items by just developing this sector and substituting that imported materials by locally made, locally available goods, and we can support the domestic demand. Well, in general, since Ethiopia is a very broad and wide nation in terms of total area, we can classify the mineral sites of Ethiopia from northern Ethiopia, Tigray, up to southern Ethiopia in general. We have 3 belts, okay, mineral belts or zones. It's possible to say zones, okay. It's possible to say mineral belts, mineral regions, mineral sites. Sorry. These are the western and southwestern greenstone belts. The western lowlands, all western lowlands of Ethiopia are grouped under western mineral zone or region. Southern greenstone belt, southern lowlands of Ethiopia, and the northern greenstone belt, northern part of Ethiopia, northern part and some north central part of Ethiopia. These regions are regions classified to make our understanding simple, our understanding clear. Okay. I thank you so much for attending this session.
ልዩነት መፍጠር ዓላማችን ነው። ዓለም አቀፍ ተወዳዳሪ መሆን አለባችሁ። የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ጥራትና ደረጃውን የጠበቀ ስልጠና በመስጠት ብቁ ዜጋ እያፈራን ነው። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ፣ በቲኬቲንግና ሪዘርቬሽን፣ በሆቴልና ቱሪዝም ሙያዎች አሰልጥነን ተወዳዳሪ እናደርጎታለን። ኮሌጃችን ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ICM ጋር በመተባበር ዓለም አቀፍ ዕውቅና ያለው ስልጠና እየሰጠ ይገኛል። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን በበረራ መስተንግዶ የምንሰጣቸው ስልጠና ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ ዕውቅና አለው። አድራሻ ከጎላጉል ታወር 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።